Tonight we're talking about one voice. Tonight we're talking about what is this one voice that is important in our lives of God speaking to us. And when I started to think about this whole voice thing, it reminded me about when I went through puberty. This deep voice that I have, this elegant radio voice apparently, has been a work in progress over a number of years, might I say. And at about the age of 11, I went from, "Hi, how you going?" to, "Hi, how you doing?" Right? But in that transitional process, there was a number of moments where my life changed. Like when you'd walk up to a nice girl and you'd come up to her and go, "Oh, wow, you look lovely." And she'd go, "Hi, how you going?" I'd go, "Well, my name's Ryan." And at that point, it either worked one or two ways. It was either like, "Ha, ha, ha, this is awesome," and there was an icebreaker, or it was like, that was a bit of my story. Or I'd be out on the cricket field and, I'd pumping the boys up, "Come on, boys, here we go." And, and the batsman would turn around at me and just look at me. Maybe the batsman got a bit frustrated at me. And so when I went through puberty, my voice just kind of had these moments. It was always at the worst time, right? Like you're getting up to give a speech in class and it's like, "Good morning, everybody." And then everyone looks at you like, "Guys, I'm trying to be serious." And then they can't go with you anyway. When I was young, I used to use my voice in a whole bunch of different weird ways and say a whole bunch of different things. Like, I love my sport, and I'd say football, which means AFL here. Yeah, right? Like real football, where you actually use your foot, not once every sixth tackle. All right? Yeah. Whoa. Because of that other type of football, I think Pat Keaty's the only person in the room that's really happy with how that's going at the moment. And so when I was like 10, 11, maybe up to about 15, I used to play football AFL in the backyard. I'd run around and kick the ball to myself or whatever because nobody wanted to play with me. And I'd be running around kicking the ball to myself and I would commentate myself through the game. And Judd handballs it, Jonathan Brown takes the ball, kicks it across, and Voss takes a grab, snaps a goal, and then I'd go run behind the goals and pick up the flags and wave them as if I was a goal umpire. These things that you do, that you look back on and you go, "Oh my goodness, what the heck?" All right? But I thought I was awesome. Or I'd go for a run and I'd be running along and I'm commentating myself as if I'm in a triathlon. And Shelton's pushing hard now. He's coming really strong. And it's going to be a big finish. He's hitting 3-minute Ks. Here we go. Like, seriously, what a loser. Nothing's changed. And so, isn't it funny though? When you're young, you just say things that just don't make sense and these things that they're random. Isn't it funny though, as a kid, how innocent we can be there, I just want to be a scriptwriter, right? And LA, sure. As a kid, it's all about what our voice is about. It's all about what I can say, and it doesn't matter what anybody else would say as long as I get to talk, right? My school that I work in is from prep all the way through to year 10 at the moment. Okay, and so in my role, I kind of oversee all of that. And so I'm a secondary teacher, and I walk into these year 1 classrooms, and I start off with, "Good morning, everybody." Biggest mistake ever, because then it's, "Good morning, Mr. Blushirley, and may God bless you." And I'm just standing there, just awkwardly waiting, "Come on, hurry up." And then if you ask the kids a question, suddenly it's just bang, 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 bang. Hands come up everywhere. Every kid wants to say something, all right? I walk into a secondary classroom, one of my happy places. I walk in and I ask a question and it's just like, "Really? You asked me that?" And suddenly I get donuts, absolutely nothing. But isn't it true though, as we grow older, it becomes less about our voice and more about those other voices coming into us. We stop caring about what we can say, but we start caring about what other people say about us. And as a school teacher, I often see so many things that are getting said to teenagers today. These loud voices that are challenging them and pulling away from who they were created to be. I've got some of those voices up here that I see every single day as a school teacher. The first voice that I see up here every day is, if you can't have it now, it's not worth it. It's this loud voice that screams out to teenagers. This next thing here, I see it every day. You're not normal. I hear it in the classroom. They say it about me, I think. The next one there, the next one there is, you're not good enough. I hear this all the time. The students, they jump on the opportunity to have a go at somebody else and say that they're not good enough. The next one I see all the time is, if you fail, then you're a failure, is what they say to each other. Oh, you failed that test, huh? And they leave it at that. The next one I see all the time is this: you're not pretty enough. The next one I see is this: you can't do it. There's no I can, I'll try, it's just you can't. The next voice that I see all the time in schools is this: don't think, just do. I need it now. I want it right now at this very moment. The next one you get is this: God can't be real. I can't see him. These are the voices that I see as a school teacher every single day. And these voices are so loud that they're pulling away from what we were created to be. And so I want to share from you a story from the Bible. Is that okay? Oh, okay. Maybe not. Is that okay if I share a story from the Bible? Yes, thank you. Whew, tough crowd. All right, maybe I need the other microphone back. This story is about a guy who understood what these loud noises were about, these voices that were pulling him away from what he was created to be, and then understood what the most important voice was in his life. And this guy is a guy named Elijah. He's a prophet, okay, in the Old Testament, in the OT. It's not that scary, the Old Testament. Trust me, it's all good. All right? And this guy, Elijah, he had a lot going on in his life. I just want to take up the end part of the story. Essentially what happened is that this guy, King Ahab, was this like crazy dude, you know, had all these false prophet stuff that were going on. Elijah had been hiding, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, essentially, God brings Elijah back to King Ahab. There'd been no rain, it'd been a desert for a while, and God's like, go back to him and try and get him. And anyways, right? Then we pick up the story from here. And essentially what happened is God sent Elijah to King Ahab to say, well, look, we're going to bring the rain. We're going to bring the rain tonight, guys. And suddenly what he said to him, he said, you need to go tell King Ahab that he needs to choose to follow me if he wants the rain. And so Elijah's like, being a prophet, he's like, really? Are you serious? I've got to go to the king and tell him that he has to worship you? And essentially what happens is then Elijah comes up with this great idea. And he says to King Ahab, he says, well, let's have a competition. We're going to have a little beat-off and see whose God's stronger. Is your God or my God stronger? And this is what they do. They end up going to the top of this mountain, and they set up these two sacrifice things at the top of this mountain. And Elijah says to King Ahab, he says, well, you can go first. And essentially what will happen here, whoever can build the best fire first, all right, build this fire, you can have the best lamb that you want, put him on top, and essentially your guys can pray to their God. And if your fire starts in less time than my fire, then you'll be the winner and then you win, right? But if my God wins, then we're awesome and you're not, and you need to worship our God, and then God will bring rain, okay? And essentially what happens is that Elijah, being the good man he was just like, well, King Ahab, you can go first, you can have the best lamb you want. And so King Ahab sets up this big thing, and he gets this like 450 like dudes from this other god, and they all like start dancing around, start in the morning, God, come, God, now, bang, make fire. It's kind of like started in the morning and then kept going through lunch, like, I'm really hungry, but God, come now, they're still going, nothing happens, gets to evening, still like, come on, hurry up. Right now they're kind of like, God, come now, please. And they keep going around and nothing happens. And then Elijah starts laughing at him like, guys, seriously, you look really funny. And so Elijah then goes and he builds his fire and he gets it right. And he builds this like trench around it, okay? And he puts his lamb on top and he gets like all these buckets of water. I think they had buckets back then. Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, all right? And he gets these buckets of water and he pours it into this trench and makes like this thing on the outside of this thing, right? And he gets these buckets of water and starts throwing them on top of this lamb and the wood and whatever. And, you know, like if it's wet wood, it ain't going to light. And then he's just like, And the God of the real God, right now, I call on you to prove to everyone that you are God and set this thing on fire. And poof, suddenly this thing lights up. And our God, the God of Abraham, comes through. And suddenly every single other person drops to their knees and starts to try and worship God. Long story then continues. Elijah then kills all those guys. Essentially then King Ahab didn't want to worship the real God, and he goes back to his wife. Now, it's scary when you go to your wife and you've lost. My wife just looks at me like this, like, what? You lost again? All right? And so King Ahab goes back to his wife, Jezebel, and he's like, look, love, I love you a lot. You're so beautiful. You're so important in my life. Elijah beat me. And Jezebel gets really angry and then sends this message out to go tell Elijah that because you beat my husband, I need to sort this out, because the girls here know that the girls always sort out the guys' problems, right? And then Elijah gets wind of the fact that Jezebel wants to kill him, and Elijah goes running to hide again, right? They play a bit of hide and seek. And he spends 40 days and 40 nights trying to get away. And essentially, on the 40th day, he starts speaking to God. And God says to Elijah, he says, I want you to climb that mountain. And that mountain was called Mount Sinai. And he climbs up to the top of Mount Sinai because God says, I want to speak to you up there. And suddenly what happens at the top of this mountain is he's waiting up the top of Mount Sinai going, God, I'm ready for you to speak to me. I'm ready for you. And all these loud noises, this negativity, all this stuff happening in my life, I'm ready for you to speak to me now. And what happens is this earthquake erupts. And Elijah's standing there at the top of Mount Sinai, and he's listening for God to speak to him during this earthquake, and God doesn't speak. And then suddenly this thunder erupts, and he's standing at the top of this mountain going, God, speak to me. And he's waiting for God in this thunder, and he doesn't hear God. And then suddenly wind and rain comes howling through. And he's like, but God, I'm faithful. You told me to climb to the top of Mount Sinai and hear your voice. And God doesn't speak to him. And then suddenly, this still, small breeze comes through. And God speaks to Elijah. And suddenly, his life is changed. In our lives, we have these loud voices, these things that are challenging us in all that we do. And one of the hardest things about being a Catholic in this world is the fact that God's voice is often the quietest voice. God's voice is often found in that still, small breeze. And in the busyness of our lives and the busyness of everything going on, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not smart enough, you're a failure, so you fail. Suddenly we can't hear God's voice. And I don't know about you, but I find it so hard at times to hear God. And all God wants us to do is just breathe and stop. And suddenly, he speaks to us and our lives are changed. I just want to get the band up here just because it makes things feel more spiritual when they're up here. Tonight, I want to tell you that God wants us to climb up Mount Sinai. Tonight, right here in this room, God wants to speak to us. Maybe in your life you've never heard God's voice before. Maybe in your life it's been a while since you've heard God's voice before. And all you need to do is just stop and breathe so that we can overcome these things in our life that are challenging us. Because I want to tell you, this is what God would say to you tonight. For that first one, we'll bring this up on the screen, that first thing that I hear from teenagers today, if you can't have it now, it's not worth it. Do you know what God would say to us in his stillness with this still small breeze? He would say this to you. He would say, everything is worth the wait. To the next one, you're not normal, me. God would say to you tonight, he would say, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. To this next one, you're not good enough. You know what God would say to you tonight? He would say, you are perfect, just the way you are. And the world would say to you, if you're a failure, if you fail, you're a failure. And God would say, failure is an opportunity to learn. And my grace is made perfect in my weakness. And then the world would say to us, it would say, you're not pretty enough. And you know what? You know what God would say to you? Girls, he would say, you are beautiful. You know what he would say to the blokes? You're the man. Unless you want to be, you are beautiful. Each to their own. You know when the world says you can't do it, do you know what God says to you tonight? He says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And then the world calls out to us. It says, don't think, do. God says faith and deeds need to go together. And then the world says, God can't be real. I can't see him. And do you know what God says to that? In the stillness, he says, I am. I just am. I'm here. I'm present. And I care for you. And his voice is all that matters in our lives. And this is what it's about. This is our journey. And we just need to stop and breathe so that God can speak to us. I'm just going to finish with the story. Because God's voice speaks to us in all different ways. There was this girl walking through the markets with her dad. And they were walking past all of these stalls in these markets. And she was holding her dad's hand. She was this little girl. And she stopped as she was walking past this particular stall. And she looked and she saw this beautiful pearl necklace. And she said to her dad, she said, oh, Dad, can I have that? And her dad looked at her and he's like, oh, sweetheart, you don't need that. You're already beautiful. And her dad looks at, and she looks at her dad, she's like, oh, but Dad, if I wore that, I'd be like a princess. And her dad looks at her and he's like, oh, sweetheart, you're already a princess. But if you really want it, I'll go buy it for you. It's only $5. And he goes and he pays for this pearl necklace and she puts it around her neck and she looks at her dad and she's like, Dad, do I look like a princess? And her dad's like, oh, sweetheart, you're always a princess in my eyes and I love you so much. And they go home that night and they have dinner as a family and then he walks her upstairs in their house and it's bedtime and he walks her into the bedroom, puts her into the bed, he tucks her into bed, he sits down next to her, reads her a story, and as the story finishes, he kisses her on the forehead, and as he looks down, he sees that she's still wearing this pearl necklace. And he says to her, he says, look, love, how about we take this pearl necklace off? Oh, no, Dad, I'm a princess. And her dad looks at her, oh, sweetheart, I love you so much. And he walks away and he goes to bed. Comes along to the next day and they have dinner as a family and then it's time to walk her upstairs to bed and he walks her upstairs and he puts her into bed, he tucks her in, he sits down next to her, he reads her a story and he looks down as he kisses her on the forehead and he sees the pearl necklace and he says, sweetheart, would you let me hold on to the pearl necklace? Oh, no, Dad. I'm a princess. And her dad kind of puts his head down and he goes, I love you, sweetheart, and he goes away. Comes along to the next day, the family has dinner again, and then they climb up the stairs again and he walks up holding her hand, he tucks her into bed, he sits down next to her, he reads her this story, and he looks down at her and he goes to kiss her on the forehead and he realizes that she's not wearing the necklace. And he looks at her and she's crying and he says to her, sweetheart, what's up? You've taken your pearl necklace off. And she reaches down into the bed and she pulls this pearl necklace out and she says to Dad, you can have this. I don't think I'm a princess anymore. And the dad looks at her and he starts to cry and he takes this pearl necklace and he walks out of the room. He walks into his bedroom, he puts the pearl necklace down, he opens up his drawers and he pulls something out of his drawers and he walks into the bedroom back to his daughter. And he comes up to her and he says, sweetheart, I have here in my hand a genuine, real pearl necklace. You've been wearing a fake pearl necklace from the markets for the last 3 days. Tonight, because you were prepared to give up the fake one, tonight I want to give you the real, genuine pearl necklace. And he gives it to her and they hug and he says, sweetheart, you are a princess in my eyes at all times. Friends, tonight we have an opportunity to choose the real, genuine, authentic voice in our life. Not those voices from the markets, those cheap voices that mean nothing to us. We get to choose God's voice, that real, authentic voice. In order to do that, we're going to pray in a second, but in order to do that, what I want everyone to do, I want everyone to stand up and come down the front here. No one's exempt. I want everyone right now, jump up out of your seats, come right down the front here. One of the things I love about being a Catholic is that it's not about me, it's about we. It's about us as one community together. And so a message like this can be so challenging. It can be so hard to choose to follow the real, authentic voice that I don't know about you, but I find it easier when I do it with a whole bunch of other people. And so soon we're going to have Reco and prayer teams and all these awesome things, but we're going to start off as one voice, together choosing to follow God's voice. And we do that in a way of singing, which is a prayer for us, because I don't know what to say to God sometimes. And that's why we have these awesome musos that write songs for us. And so what I'm going to encourage you to do in a second is when we start singing with Emmanuel Worship, I encourage you to open your arms up, open your hearts up and just say, God, tonight I want to breathe. Tonight I want a real, genuine, authentic encounter with your voice, truth. So I encourage you, just everyone to close your eyes right now, open your hands up. I'm going to pray and then we're going to sing. Jesus, you are awesome, so holy, and we get to stand in your presence. We don't deserve it, but you love us and care for us so much. Lord, I ask that you would get rid of all of these fake voices in our lives and that suddenly we would be able to hear your true voice in the stillness. Get rid of all the loudness and lead us into the silence of your voice. Breathe on us tonight, Lord. We choose to follow you.